Hello, and welcome to Apache TinkerPop's home here on Twitch. Today we have another TinkerPop Wide stream where we explore the wider TinkerPop community, looking at tools, libraries, graph systems built on the TinkerPop framework, or even applications built on those foundations. And today I'm here with Kelvin Lawrence and Chris McGinnis to learn more about Graph Explorer, which we featured here before, but it's an open source visual graph exploration tool driven by AWS. And we'll learn a bit about what's new in the project, how it fits into the broader graph ecosystem, and how it's helping people see and understand their graph data in interesting new ways. So Chris and Kelvin, thanks for joining here today.
Thanks for having us.
So where do you think we should start, Chris? I know there's some like new and interesting things in Graph Explorer since the last time you were on here, and I don't know, we're excited to kind of see what's there.
Yeah, absolutely. We recently released version 3.0 of Graph Explorer. This one includes a brand new major new feature that I'm going to showcase here. We call it the Schema Explorer. It allows you to see your schema from the inferred shape of your data. So I'll kind of show what that means exactly.
Okay.
So here I've got your kind of default Graph Explorer setup inside of a Neptune notebook.
Yeah, could you perhaps maybe even take us through some of the general overview of what's happening in the
generally what is Graph Explorer kind of thing?
Because it does look a little different to me, I think, from even the last time I've seen it. So yeah, maybe an overview would be helpful too.
Sure. Version 3.0 also introduced a slight UI update. Before we had some buttons up here in the corner that kind of let you navigate between some of the views, but only certain views had certain buttons. So you had to jump around a bunch. So now we have a much cleaner UI up here at the top that is very clear of what you can do. You've got your settings, connections, schema is the new one, data table, and graph. And so generally you would start on the connection screen, pick your connection. And then if you just want to dive into your data, you would jump over to the graph. And you've got your search over here. You can add nodes, expand, that kind of stuff. Your data table is another view into your data. You can switch between your node types, see page by page what all the data is. And jumping into our new feature, the Schema Explorer, here you can visualize the shape of that data. So this is showing you all the node labels and the connections between those node labels. And you can dive into each individual one, see those relationships called out here, as well as dive into what actual properties we discovered in that schema. You do the same thing with edges as well. That one has nothing. Let's look at the route. That's got a distance. There we go.
And I guess how does it? I mean, just to be clear too. I mean, I did say at the start of this was like a, sort of a AWS project. It does, and I'll put the link to it on the screen for a moment, which is probably going to block one of our faces. I'm not sure who. Oh, it didn't. How about that? I guess there's only 3 of us. That's why. Yeah, if you want to check out the GitHub repository, you can find it there. But I said it was an open source thing. It was something that's a kind of an AWS open source project. But it's also, just to be clear, it's for folks who are just brand new to this isn't something that only works with Amazon Neptune, correct?
That's correct. In fact, I've got another environment right next to this one that I'm running locally. So if I jump over to the connections, you can see here this very helpful URL for a database. This is running inside of a Docker Compose, so I was able to rename the host to something very, very simple. But my URL is straight up just a localhost URL. So this is all running locally. This database is even running locally. This is a Gremlin server database. And I've got a very minimum version of error routes loaded in here. So you can do this exact same setup from the GitHub repo. There are instructions under the samples directory. Now there are links on the root README as well.
Yeah, and like you said, Stephen, I mean, as I think people know, my day job is Amazon Neptune, but I've also been a TinkerPop committer longer than I've been involved with Neptune. And so with the AWS sort of hat on, we had a lot of customers of Neptune coming to us saying, we would like out of the box when we use Neptune to have a visual tool. We've already shown on previous streams the kind of notebook support that we built, but they wanted a more point and click, easier to use out of the box experience. That's why we built Graph Explorer originally, but also we've always wanted it to be an open source project so that the community would benefit from it. So, like I can use it with my Gremlin server on my laptop, and also with Neptune, but also with RDF stores, and any like Neptune with OpenCipher as well. So we've tried to make it as multi-language and as multi-platform as possible. So while it kind of began life as something Neptune customers were asking for, we've tried to make it something the community will benefit from. I think I should also say we're not trying to take over the world with it either. We very much realize there are other companies out there who their main business is to build these kind of tools, but go much, much further beyond where we are. So what we're hoping is this gives people an on-ramp when they get started, but we still fully expect they might go and purchase a third-party tool if they want to go beyond where Graph Explorer goes.
Well, I mean, this does give a lot of capability, though, right? Just out of the box, and gets people started. I think the schema thing looks really interesting. Does it? I guess it's for Neptune, as opposed to I suppose per provider, it kind of has its own way of grabbing and determining that schema. Is that fair?
That's mostly fair. The two approaches we generally take is if you happen to be using a Neptune database, there is a helpful API that Neptune provides that gives us kind of a head start to make the performance of the schema sync a little bit faster. But beyond that, finding the properties and edge connections, they're the same across the board. So if you're bringing your own Gremlin servers versus Neptune, that discovery process is very, very similar.
Yeah, I guess that's always been kind of a question, is just, at least with TinkerPop itself, since it doesn't have concepts of schema or anything like that, it does make it harder for tools to be able to interact with TinkerPop when they need those kinds of things. I mean, I think TinkerPop also, without schema, there's some limitations it places on ability to optimize certain parts of Gremlin and things like that too. So, I mean, there's ongoing discussion about schema. I mean, we've been discussing for a long time when schema can land. I don't, even as of just last couple of weeks, it's been it's been under discussion as to just how it can arrive and in what state it'll get there. But I think I always bring up, I think I always bring up, like, what is it? How do we get something that's going to help the tool developers build more robust tools, build better tools that can really help folks like understand their data and have it just work easier and better. I don't know. Have you ever thought about? I mean, one way is to, like, you're able to get the schema because the graph provides it. I mean, is there any value in somebody who knows their schema and it's a static schema that they could simply provide it without having to iterate through a lot of things? And I mean, it's a sampling process, I guess we might take with determining.
Yeah, Graph Explorer uses a sampling process. The first couple of steps are go discover all the node labels and edge labels. And I'm speaking specifically for Gremlin. And once we have that list, then we start doing a sampling process of, like, give me at least one of each of these types. And from there, we can infer the properties. And there's a different query that is still using sampling that gets the edge connections as well.
Oh, cool.
So
I think it's
that's
an
where,
interesting idea, though, Stephen. And it's something I think Chris,
Mhm.
you and I have talked about a little bit, which is if you very much know your schema, you could give us a file, perhaps that's a hint, and we could verify that, yeah, we can find the things that you say are
Yeah.
in that file. So that's definitely, maybe it's not there today, but I think it's a good idea for the future, something else we could look at adding.
Yeah, absolutely. And as far as what a database provider could give us, for a tool like Graph Explorer, it doesn't need anything strict, right? It just needs information, essentially. Just give me a list. Um, so I don't know if you still call that a schema. To me, it's more like the shape of the data.
Yeah.
Where, I come from the SQL world where schema is very, very strict. Like you are
Right.
following this set of rules. And I never really saw it that way, at least for Graph Explorer.
Yeah. I mean, I think yeah, I think there's definitely two sides to the, again, I brought up, how are tools going to use schema? Like what are we going to do in TinkerPop to make sure that whatever we're providing is going to be useful to those tools? Some of those tools do not need, like, again, a SQL like schema necessarily. In fact, a lot of them don't. And probably the ones we care about the most right now would be like uh, AI-based tooling, LLMs that are going to want to consume that kind of information. And TinkerPop needs a better way to expose that than kind of what we kind of offer now, which is, again, mostly it's like, well, you got to sample your way around until you find enough of it that it starts to make sense. So, but yeah, I think for whatever the first iteration of schema would be with TinkerPop would probably be something fairly simple in my mind. But we'll see where that conversation sort of goes.
Yeah, and then you make a good point about LLMs and sort of the world we're in now, where we're prompting models to try and help us with just about everything we do all day long. And trying to get models to write queries requires being able to give them context, but also typically a schema to go with that context. So the easier it is to get the schema out of the graph, the better for those use cases. So whether you're working with LangChain, Llama Index, MCP agents, pick your favorite tool. Almost always, if you're trying to get an agent to write a query for you, you're giving the agent, as part of the prompt, some clue as to what the schema is. So having something in TinkerPop where we could not only maybe define schema, but also easily get the schema out would help for those kind of use cases.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm very interested to see where that kind of goes. Maybe with some luck, we can see it sooner than later. Again, there's been a lot of discussions recently in the community about that particular topic. So maybe it's finally turning into something concrete, and then yeah, we can start seeing that bubble up into some of these tools.
Hey, Chris, one question for you. Maybe you could show folks watching, because I think this is kind of something I like being able to do, and we have a lot of business users for tools like this. Is right now all your nodes are just little graphs. What if I wanted my continents to be like a country or a map of the world or something like that? Can we change those labels to be a bit more intuitive, perhaps?
Let's do that. I'm gonna switch back over to Gremlin, just since this is the TinkerPop stream, right? And I'm gonna go ahead and go over to the graph side, and you can see here my search also not super useful. We're seeing the IDs of the airports, which we can dive into a little bit deeper here. But as Kelvin said, it could definitely be better. So one way you could do that is just coming over to the sidebar here, and you can look at the node label styling. So you can go one by one and style all these. There's also a quicker route. If you have some of the nodes out on the graph, you can right click on it and say customize this node. So this will let us set what property we're using to display in the UI and on the graph. So for air routes, I would say the code is probably the best thing to show on the graph because it's nice and short and clear. But I always like to do the city as the secondary description field. And then we can set icons in colors as well. So let's go up a level here, and I think I've got, let's see, yeah, I think tower control makes sense. And we can make this maybe a teal or a green color. Make that a little darker. So now we've got a customized color set for our airports.
Yeah,
And
Chris,
let's say
we couldn't actually see where you went and selected that. So what did you do there? What kind of
Which
file, or where did you get that icon from?
Oh, that wasn't shown through the stream. So that was, I got that from a file on my storage, but I downloaded that from Lucid icons. So if you do lucid.dev, there's a great set of free icons in here that you can go look for.
And those are just SVG icons, is that right?
These are just SVGs. So if you just wanted to, like, let's say we wanted to make it a plane, we'll make it a plane view. It used to be, it would pop up a little thing at the bottom. So I'm not sure. They must have changed. There it is.
Yeah, we're not actually able to
download
see what
SVG.
you're seeing, Chris. So you'll have to.
Oh, it only shares one tab. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me fix that.
If you're doing secret stuff in the background, that's okay. Otherwise, it'd be great to see what you're up to.
All right. I think I'm sharing the next screen. I'm not sure if it's on the stage. Is everyone seeing the
Not yet. There we go. There it is.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
So
okay.
I'll start back over just so everyone's clear. So I went to lucy.dev, which lands you here, and you can just start searching. And if you do that, and I search for planes, you click the icon. There's a nice big button that says download SVG. So you download that guy, and then you can load it into Graph Explorer super easily.
Oh, nice. So any library or tool, or even if you write your own that builds an SVG file, we can use that.
That's right. Another good one if you need more hero icons. They're a little bit thinner, but they also have some good icons in there. All of this very open sourced and very flexibly licensed.
Yeah, because I remember even way back when we were working on the notebooks and we added basic visualization, the first demo we did was like a fraud use case. And first question we got when we showed it to someone was, can't my bank accounts be a credit card icon? So icons are important, I think. So.
You have to make it real.
But yeah, if you do,
as we've all said over the years, right? Graph databases just lend themselves to these kind of visuals, I think. So
yeah, that's true.
When people see this, and if they can even relate to the icons as well, I think it just really helps them understand their data, because if the data is a graph, it just looks great.
Be cool if you had like a neat, just speaking more on visuals, it'd be some sort of color scheme picker rather than just an individual thing, because people just want their stuff to look good, and just fussing with those little dials is always
it is a pain. I
you don't know what
you're
particularly if you're not good at that,
that I
right?
like. Yeah.
Need a color scheme
I
picker.
100% agree. It is on the backlog. In fact, I believe there might even be a pull request already.
Now, I was going to say, Chris, to Stephen, we love pull requests on the repo.
All right, so now that I've changed all those icons, if you jump back over to the schema, you can see it makes a big difference.
Ah, cool.
Nice.
Cool. I suppose we probably covered, just maybe going back to the Gremlin side of things. I wonder, and I'm sure we covered it the last time we spoke, but how does Graph Explorer handle large graphs again? What was the story for it? As you're exploring, like how, as you're exploring and you expand into bigger and bigger things, what sort of happens?
So there's two sides to that. One side is if your database itself is very large, Graph Explorer can handle that pretty well. searching, filtering through that data is not that taxing if your database has enough memory and CPU. So if your general queries run well, Graph Explorer will likely be able to go through your data pretty easily. On the flip side, if the graph you're visualizing inside of Graph Explorer starts to become large, and we're going to define large somewhere in 1,500 to 2,000 nodes, that's when you might start to see some degradation in performance inside the app. I believe I can pretty easily demonstrate this if I just go a little crazy here. And let's say I run a query to get every single edge in the database. That query shouldn't actually take a ton of time to execute. But once it comes back, I'm going to click Add All. Oh, no. I guess I can't do that. We'll try limiting it to, we'll just try 1,000, see what happens. Nope. All right. Demo fail.
Well, you did try to do something big, so.
I did.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Stephen, the basic answer to your question is, at the end of the day, the rendering is JavaScript in the browser. So it's got all those caveats attached. I think, Chris, you told me one time that this is Canvas API under the covers. So there's no sort of WebGL acceleration going on here or anything like that. So you can explore the Graph Explorer neighborhood, but you wouldn't probably use this tool to display, say, a 1 billion node graph. You'd go get something custom to do that. So that there are going to be limits, but as long as you can explore neighborhoods of the graph, you should be fine.
Sure. Yeah, cool.
So just want to quickly call out one of the community contributions we got to Graph Explorer that's included in this release. So in prior releases, the Data Explorer was just there to kind of give you the ability to page through your data. But someone contributed the ability to export that page of data, and it follows the same kind of export process that the table view and the graph does. So you can export it to CSV or JSON, and you can filter down the property list if you want. So that was a great contribution. I forget who it was, but I wanted to make sure I called that out because that was great.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, excellent. It's always nice to get get a useful pull request.
So Chris, for people who might be thinking about contributing, maybe to say a couple of words about the sort of code base that Graph Explorer uses, so they know what sort of skill set. Not of course the LLMs can't help with that these days, but what sort of skill set do you need to maybe make a pull request for Graph Explorer?
Sure. First, I'll start off by saying that the repository itself is has a very long backlog in the GitHub issues. So if we go to Graph Explorer here at the root,
we're not seeing your screen again, Chris.
I did it specifically in that tab, hoping that it would just transfer over, but I guess not.
Yeah, it's interesting that that's doing that. I've never seen it do it by tab before.
Yeah, that's odd. All right, I should be sharing.
Yeah, coming
to GitHub repo now. So the list is very long. So the very first thing I'd suggest is probably similar to most other repos. Whoops.
That's a lot of. That's actually that's a really long issue list.
Yes.
Are those generated by? Are those your things mostly, or
most of them are mine? Okay. But what I would suggest people do is look for this good first issue label. If you search or filter your search down by that, you can see there's 10 available at the moment. These are ones that I've tagged myself saying, this is where you can get started. Go find this, pick it up, and work it. It usually means it's a smaller feature, more targeted in the code base. Won't require a ton of knowledge to get started. So that's the first thing I would recommend. Then second, There are instructions in the repo for getting started. I'm actually in the process of improving these. So what you see today may not match what you'll see in a couple of weeks. But if you find those instructions, get your local environment set up. From there, the tech stack is a React application with a Express node server on the side. So it is a mono repo. Both of those are here in the same repo. The React app has multiple layers to it. I don't think you need a ton of knowledge about those layers. But if we're interested, the state is mostly stored in Jotai atoms. Any kind of persistence is handled through local storage in an index DB inside the browser. So it's completely stateless on the server side. There's zero state there other than a config file. And let's see what else. In order to do the queries to different query languages, we use something called an explorer. So there's the 3 different explorers, one for Sparkle, one for Gremlin, and one for OpenCipher. And that's what generates our queries. The API for that essentially looks like the kind of actions you might do in Graph Explorer. So you've got like a fetch schema API or a filter search. I think it's called keyword search. So they're fairly easy to follow.
That's actually a good point, right? I don't know if that came out last time, but this is more than just Gremlin too, right? You're able to sort of explore lots of things, yeah?
Yeah, that's correct. We try to keep the feature set more or less one-to-one across all query languages, which can be a little tough, especially once you go from the property graph side of the world with OpenCipher and Gremlin over to the RDF world with Sparkle.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow we've managed it so far. There's been very few differences between the two within the UI itself, but that does add an extra wrinkle.
I guess so with RDF, what is that typically connecting to? Like what's the connection options with RDF?
That one's completely open. RDF has been such an open standard from the get-go that it was very easy to support almost any RDF endpoint. The query generation itself generally needs to take a few extra steps to shape the data into more of the property graph shape that Graph Explorer is expecting.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where some of the extra complication comes in.
I see. Cool. And I guess I can't remember, there's no, this is all exploring too, right? I mean, hence the name Graph Explorer. There is no actual querying, like direct querying that happens in this, right?
There is. I tried to do it earlier and I broke.
Oh, that's what you were doing. Yeah, that's true. My mistake. You were doing that on the side.
Let me try to share that screen again.
Yeah, that Stephen, when Graph Explorer launched, it was just a point and click experience because we'd sort of heard business users want something simple they can just play around with to look at the graph data. Almost the minute we did that, people started saying, well, if we could write a query, that would be just so much better because then we could start with a simple query. And so, Chris, I forget how many months ago it was, but when we added and launched the query editor.
Yeah, and that unfortunately, I think that initial idea that it was just for exploring kind of has just stuck with me for a long time, and I should have remembered that, and I just watched you do it, and I didn't believe it because, well, it didn't work. So, but yeah, I think I can imagine, yeah, as fast as you can just allow exploring, somebody's going to want to query a subgraph or something and be able to look at that.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I
and
think it was a really good change. I mean, we resisted query for quite a long time because we were convinced, point and click is what people have asked for. But now you can actually run a query. Like you can just have your Gremlin server there and have it running locally if you want to, and just be interacting with Gremlin using this tool all on your laptop or your desktop or whatever. So, I mean, Stephen, you and I go back far enough to remember things like Gephi plugins to TinkerPop, right, for our visualization. So
Yeah, that was so much fun to build that, and I was really excited when I found out how I could like make that work. And then it served its purpose for a long time. I used it for a lot of different things when that was really the only game in town, essentially. But yeah, it's we've come a long way from Gephi plugin.
but essentially this works the same way, right? Just expose your Gremlin server locally, and Chris, anywhere you can run a node server, you can run this, right? We expose it as Docker as well, but pretty much anywhere you can run a node server, you can run Graph Explorer. So.
Exactly. Yeah, I think our minimum node version is 22. So as long as you're running node 22, you can run it.
Looks like we have a question. I'll pop that up here. If my query returns arbitrary data types, how does that get handled? What happens when something like an orphaned edge or a non-graph type?
Maybe start with g.inject1, Chris.
Say that again.
Do a g.inject1 just to show what a number.
Oh, just like. Super simple. Sure.
G.inject Java auth color.
What about doing something like a value map though? Something a little
That's
more
a good
interesting.
idea. Yeah.
Let's see. We'll do a limit one, I think. There you go. So what we end up doing is we'll take any data that we know how to format and present it the best way we can. So in this case, I'm getting essentially a list of key value pairs. And so I'll represent it this way. It'll look very similar to what you see in the properties list over here. There are multiple layers you could end up in though. So earlier I was showing a list of edges. I'm just going to do one here. You can actually dive into the edge, see those properties, but also see the two connected vertices, dive into those as well. So you can see it's got kind of a hierarchical form to it. And Kelvin, you had given me queries a long time ago, and I know I'm putting you on the spot, but that would create multiple paths that essentially group together multiple edges and vertices. Do you remember how to do that?
I don't remember exactly the one I might have given you, but I think what you showed there perhaps was a good response to the question, because I think there was something in the question about just an edge. And I think what you showed there is, even though the query just retrieved an edge, you also fetched the nodes on the other end of it. So you gave kind of the bigger picture of the edge.
Yeah, that's what happens with an orphaned edge or a non-graph type. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, hopefully in most TinkerPop stores, we wouldn't actually allow an orphaned edge. But if you get a response back that is just an edge, then you should, I think, Chris, always see the nodes on either end of it, right?
Right, and I am performing an additional query to get that information to make this result set more rich. If you need to see the exact results, you can always just look at the raw response. So I'm just going to get one vertex here and open up the raw response. And this is what the database is actually giving me back. So in my case, I'm using GraphSon to get some of that rich type information.
Yeah, neat.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Chris, what the query I might have given you before is, but I think that actually shows it quite well. I like the kind of concertina collapsed view you have there of the components, which is nice.
Yeah, that was a tricky bit of UX to get right and feeling correct, because once you start nesting deeply, you start, running out of or horizontal space. So I'm very happy with the way it ended up being just slightly nested together.
Yeah, and I think property graphs in general, Gremlin certainly, Cypher too, you can create these sort of maps of maps of maps type constructs. So I think it's nice that you kind of let the user go through those. It's a bit harder to get a result set like that back perhaps with Sparkle, but with, I think, property graph, it's almost too easy sometimes to get a really complex map back. So it's nice that you can help people walk through those.
Yeah, with Sparkle, it does get a little more interesting because they don't really have the concept of a true vertex or a true edge. All predicates are essentially edges, but it's really the predicates that are specifically between two resources or blank nodes, but they're also predicates to literals. And in Graph Explorer, we consider those the properties. So when you're doing a raw query for Sparkle, I essentially can't make any assumptions. Is this a vertex? Is this an edge? Is this a property? I really have no idea, because you can completely mutate the shape of it, and I have very little data about what the type is. So there's only a couple of specific queries that will actually return vertices and edges you can add to the graph. I believe describe is one of them, and a very specific shape of a select query would give you back a shape that I could infer as a vertex or an edge. So Sparkle is a little special in that regards, but it is possible to do this sort of thing.
Do you block mutations, I guess?
We don't do anything within Graph Explorer to block that, but if you're using something like Neptune as your database store, IAM credentials have a ton of different options and permissions that you could set to limit those types of operations.
Right.
We haven't tried to get into, with Graph Explorer, Stephen, any kind of concept of a user, really. So there's no logging in, authenticating. We leave it all to the back end. So if the database you're connected to will not allow you to do mutations, then you can try to do one in Graph Explorer and it just won't work. But we don't do any sort of regex pattern matching or anything like that to say, hey, is he trying to do a drop or an add v or anything like that. So, but if the backend database says you can only do read-only queries, then of course that wouldn't work. But I mean, it's certainly something people could add. It just hasn't been a priority because we've sort of left that to the back end, because most backends have their own security setup.
Right. Okay. Yeah, it just didn't seem like it was a use case that somebody would be issuing those kinds of things from here. So I was just wondering if it was just something that just wasn't
I generally do all my mutations from Graph Explorer, actually. I just find the UI
I think, Chris, since the
familiar
query editor has come along, it's quite fun, actually. If you setting up a demo or something, you got an empty graph, just add v a few tens of things and away you go. Right? So,
well, Gremlin JavaScript's getting a little closer to the I don't know, I don't remember if you use that inside of here, but it's getting a little closer to the grammar. It's at least for TinkerPop 4, it will be in that it's processing the antler grammar more directly now for some of the things that it kind of offers, particularly around Gremlin and translation and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know, maybe some of that will end up being useful to certain tools out there that are using JavaScript and need that kind of maybe client-side validation or something along those lines. So that's something that's kind of coming up.
Yeah, I think right now, Chris, it's just HTTP requests, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to touch on that a bit. So the reason Graph Explorer is not using the JavaScript driver is because we try our best to support a wide range of versions of a Gremlin server, and generally those JavaScript drivers they're kind of tied to a single version.
Yeah.
So like Kelvin said, we use HTTP requests. So if you are running a Gremlin server that only has for instance, WebSockets connectivity, you would
Mhm.
have to enable the HTTP endpoints to
Gotcha.
get Graph Explorer working.
Oh, that's a good point. Then, yeah. Yep. Well, there was something else that has always, I don't know, stuck in my mind as something again like it's not querying or anything like that. But are you able to? I seem to remember that folks wanted a way to sort of share like a particular layout of a graph and not lose the format. Has that ever been solved?
Yes, it has. Well, it has been solved as far as, say, this particular graph I have here loaded. I want to hand that over to you, Stephen. I can do that. It will not transfer the actual layout or positioning. So when you load it yourself, you will see it slightly differently, but it'll be the same data.
I see.
So here I can save the graph to a file, and I'm guessing that's, yeah. So right now it's prompting me to pick a location to save it. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to refresh my browser here. And good, it's showing that. And I'm going to hit the load button. And it's popping up a file picker that y'all cannot see. So I'm going to go find that file. And I'm going to click open. And my graph is back.
Okay.
So that's
All right,
kind
so
of the
like
flow.
partially,
You can hand that file off to someone else as long as they have the same rough shape of the connection. So I believe what we're checking for is same query language, same database URL. And I believe also checking that IAM is enabled. Don't worry, I'm deleting all these clusters right after this. But just making sure all your settings are, the settings that really matter for a connection are the same. That's really all we're checking.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I think just remembering my time using Gephi, it was like always that you get something looking a certain way and you're a lot of tweaking and moving and reorganizing and finding a particular I don't know how much configuration you allow around your force directed layout, but there were, all those knobs and things were available in Gephi. So like you do all this work to get it nice, and like the last thing you want to do was kind of lose that. So yeah, just kind of curious about the kind of the layout.
I think Gephi
part.
from memory would even save the XY positions of things.
Yeah.
Which Chris, I know we've talked about. There's probably an issue in your backlog.
We've talked about it
for that already. So.
Yeah, that's a crucial one.
We have a lot of opportunities in that.
If you're already saving the file, I would just add the locations.
Yeah, the one tricky bit maybe is because of the way I implemented it, I wanted it to be a very flexible implementation. So for instance, if I have just data in my graph already, I can still go load that file. So I'm just going to load the file. It's going to add it to my existing graph.
Gotcha.
So maybe the positions won't be a giant issue there, because you can see we're already kind of, it's kind of clumping together already. But that's the only concern that I have in my head, and that's a very minor one.
Okay. Yeah, I got you. I don't know. I think I'd like to hear a little bit about what I guess what's maybe up next. I see you have a massive backlog of things. How do you choose from the backlog of things? Maybe Kelvin, what are you looking for?
That one.
We just toss a coin, Stephen. We have an amazing sort of set of feature requests that have come in from the community, from ourselves. So we're trying to sort of prioritize them based on really what we think the biggest impact of each of those is going to be. And like Chris said, we've also had a number of pull requests, which is fantastic, because no matter how many people you have working on something, it's always great to get pull requests where someone's done most of the work for you. And I know, Chris, you take a lot of time, go through those pull requests, and we try and be responsive. So if you have made a pull request and we haven't replied yet, forgive us, we will, certainly. But in terms of the backlog, Steve, I don't know. There's a few things that I think are interesting. Like we did the query editor, and like with all these things, the minute we did it, somebody said, "Well, what about color coding, or what about type ahead?" So, there are issues for that. Maybe someday we'll get to that. But right now, we wanted just to get the basic functionality in there. We really wanted to get schema in there because it's been something a lot of people have said, hey, it's great that we can play with the graph, but now we're doing all this work with LLMs. We want to see the schema that we've got in the graph because we're trying to prompt LLMs. So schema's been front of mind for quite a while. So we just sort of finished with that. I don't know, Chris, what's your favorite thing you'd like to add? Some of mine are very small, actually, Stephen. Like I'd like to make the layouts more spaced out more easily. So like here, it's all kind of going towards the center. Let's give some settings to make that a bit less aggressive in terms of bringing everything towards the middle of the screens. So I think there's sort of little things like layout, and then there's big things like query editor, type ahead, and all this kind of stuff. There's a big spectrum of things we're going to have to pick from.
Yeah, yes, what I would really want. I tend to go towards those smaller features as well. So for instance, my probably number one is just let me save some predefined queries here, or at least show me like a recents list. When we first implemented it, it was on our list of to-dos. It just didn't get quite there in time. So I would love to revisit that one.
I think that's nice for anyone doing a demo too. Like even today, right? If we had a list of queries, you could just be clicking on a list of queries and say, here's the one I cooked earlier. So yeah,
that'd be very nice.
So what would be your feature request, Stephen? What would you like to see in a tool like this?
Oh, I don't know.
A dancing gremlin going across the screen?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think it's, for the way, we've been thinking about kind of positioning it, it's kind of doing the job really well. It's a nice lightweight, just looks like a nice lightweight, easy to use tool. I mean, I think with Neptune, it's a pretty simple setup too, right? That's just something that's just kind of included along with Neptune. I can't remember exactly how that works when you spin up a cluster. Is it
with Neptune, if you decide to have a notebook, Graph Explorer comes with it, so you get kind of both.
You get the
one rides on the other one.
Right.
Yeah, and like I said at the beginning, we're trying not to be sort of full feature rich. We want to be good enough that people starting out have something, but there's full featured things out there that you can go get that go way beyond where we're trying to go with Graph Explorer. So
yeah,
like Chris said, we'll probably focus a little bit on the little things for a while too, just improve the layout, like the list of queries, stuff like that, because we're not trying to go into the full everything you could ever want territory with the Graph Explorer.
I mean, I think I said the one thing is just the positioning. If you could figure out how that might actually work. I mean, some people are extremely meticulous in how they want something to look, and so losing that is like pretty painful. But
right, yeah, it's
if you could figure that out,
right? So yeah, like, even here, if you were in here modifying the layouts, making it just the way you like, which I've just made it way uglier. But if I was to refresh here, we do have the nice feature of restoring your previous graph, but all that positioning will be gone. So it will essentially just run the layout once more.
Right. Yeah. So
definitely frustrating.
Yeah, I would, like I said, I think that one would be nice if there was at least something that lets you, once you get it nice, you don't want to lose it. Believe me, that's
right.
So, but yeah, and I don't know. I think again, I think a lot of people don't like fussing with color, but they want it to look nice and don't know how. So I know it's just that's such a silly thing. You probably have like a million other functional things, but again, getting these to look nice, that's pretty much what you're doing here. You're trying to get something for some kind of slide deck or presentation of some sort, or just trying to make sense of what you're looking at. And I don't know, the colors and icons and all those things, they all seem to they all have some meaning. So if you can make it the easier you can make it to make it look nice, the better.
And one thing I was going to mention, Stephen, I know in this demo and several demos we've used the air routes data set, and you and I have talked about this for a while, and you actually took it upon yourself to actually put the Eric's data set right into TinkerPop now, right? So you can actually just easily add the Eric's data set to any demo that you're doing. Just with, I think you did it through the simple graph factory process.
Yes. Yeah. So that's there as of the 3.8 release, the TinkerPop 3.8 release, and yeah, you can use it use air routes very easily in the console now without having to go find your GraphML file or what have you of air routes, and pull it from other sources. Speaking of other sources, that other source would be the Practical Gremlin site, typically, or the GitHub site. I suppose it's probably a time as any to just bring up that the second edition of Practical Gremlin is now out there and available. I think that was announced, I don't know, a couple of weeks or so ago. I'll put the link up here in case anyone wants to go check that out. But the second edition basically has been kind of a complete sort of rework with keeping the same style and the same sort of kind of learn as you go approach to what made Practical Gremlin's first edition as helpful and as successful as it was, but brings all the examples and all the content all the way up to TinkerPop 3.8, which is a good number because I think Gremlin semantics are going to be the same between 3.8 and the upcoming 4.0 version, and so it should carry well forward into the future. But at the same time, it's just like the old first edition. It's a sort of a living book. As things come out and change, we kind of add and update and improve. So that's available now for folks to take a look at.
Yeah, and Stephen, thanks so much to you for all the effort you put into that. Over the years, I've done a lot of writing projects, and I've had co-authors who've come and gone but never stayed, whereas you just took the bull by the horns, as it were, with this one. So thank you for everything you did. It's really great to see Practical Gremlin still going, because I've always envisioned it as a living book, but it gets daunting when TinkerPop's adding features as fast as we have to keep up with all that. So the work you've done to bring it up to date is great, right? Things like the merge steps didn't exist when I wrote the original. So there's so much new stuff for people to use now. All those old fold coalesce tricks we taught people, you can forget all that stuff now. So it's
I think it and it was it's been such a useful resource over the years. I mean, I don't know how many people have raised their hands to say that they've read it and use it each day, and wouldn't have learned Gremlin kind of without it. I think TinkerPop official documentation is extremely complete, I think, in my mind at least, but it's not written in a style that's the way Practical Gremlin is written, and it would be hard to get the official documentation written that way. And I think a lot of that is driven by TinkerPop being sort of a project of many people, all contributing, and they all, as hard as they try, voices shift in how the writing goes into those reference docs. The organization of the reference docs is a certain way to, again, act as a indexed reference of functionality and features. And the book is definitely more tuned to just learning and stepping you up and kind of holding your hand and taking you from the just not knowing anything to being able to do really advanced things with Gremlin. And I think that approach that you kind of established at the outset, and I tried to maintain, I think would be hard to do inside of TinkerPop itself. So we definitely needed to have that kind of external sort of resource. And it was, like I said, it's nice to have the second edition finally complete.
Time flies, right? Because I think we were redoing the introduction section, I was looking at some of the dates, and it's like 2013, 2014 when I started on the original. So it's been I remember posting it on the list, and you and Marco and others responded, way back like saying, "Hey, this is cool."
Yeah, no, you did something cool for sure. That's without a doubt. It kind of came out of, you just kind of came out of a hole with that, and
I just began as my
surprised
notes,
everybody.
right? Because I think we'd all agree there's a lot to learn with Gremlin. So I'd started making notes, and I thought, somebody said to me once, "You should publish that." So I was like, "Well, let's try the open source publishing route," which has kind of worked. So it's good.
Yeah.
So please, folks, take a look. There's so much new in Gremlin, and now thanks to so much work from Stephen, the book's fully up to date now.
Yeah.
And the price is still as good as ever, right?
That's true. All right, cool. I don't know. Is there anything else we want to kind of go over? I don't see any other questions at the moment, but this was I thought this was really good. It was nice kind of going through this and learning what was the latest in Graph Explorer.
Yeah, no, I'm just excited for everyone to try it out.
Cool. Well, let's, I hope everyone will go check out that link. Give a turn to Graph Explorer pointed at your favorite graph. Let's see what you think. And I guess feedback arrives the best way by way of, I don't know, Discord or issues.
I'm in Discord. Also, GitHub issues or discussions are probably the best approach.
Okay, there it is. All right. Well, thank you both for joining today. Again, I thought this was a nice session, and we'll see everybody next time. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen.